quorum here, so we'll ask the clerk to call a roll.
Senator Nemus,
Present.
Senator Westerfield, Senator Yates, Representative Baker,
Present.
Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Minter, Representative Miller,
Here.
Senator Mills.
I'm here. Okay. We do have a quorum, and just want to remind everybody to silence their cell phones and turn the mics on when you're speaking. And does anybody have any guests in the room that they'd like to introduce? Okay. Looks like we're all home folks here today. First item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes from the July 18th meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Minutes are approved. Thank you. One thing we like to do on at the task force is just kind of remind ourselves and read the purpose of what we're here for. So allow me to read the task force. The task force purpose and mission. The task force was developed to take a wide but deep look into the functions of the executive branch of the Commonwealth. Specifically, the hope is that we will be able to go cabinet by cabinet, allow them to come in and explain their structure from the top down and how they function. This will lead to further conversations on how each cabinet is funded and their budget building practices. Additionally, these meetings will give the cabinets the opportunity to propose legislation for future reorganization plans and any other proposals aimed at increasing efficiency that requires legislative action. Overall, this task force should produce information helpful to the General Assembly in increasing government efficiencies in the 2023 session and sessions to come. So that is our purpose and for the task force today. We have two items on our agenda, and the first is kind of a follow-up from DLG. And if you recall, we sent some questions, and they took some questions with them, and they are going to go over those questions today, and then see if we have any follow-up questions or questions after that. I'm hoping to spend 20 or 25 minutes with them, if that much, and then we can move on to the next items on our agenda. So, ladies and gentlemen at the table, if you want to once again introduce yourselves, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Co-Chair Mills and Miller and other members. As Commissioner Keene provided in his letter in the packet that we provided to the task force last Monday, the DLG thanks you for the opportunity to provide examples of the great work that our staff is providing to local governments across the Commonwealth, and also the extension that this task force generously provided to us to compile that information. With me today again is Billy Johnson, Executive Director, Office of Federal and State Grants, Will Rhodes, Executive Director, Office of Financial Management and Administration. We also have Laura Redman, Budget Manager, with us in the crowd. Regrettably, Commissioner Keene is not able to join us today. And as I mentioned, the DLG provided those detailed responses to the supplemental questions asked by the committee and is prepared to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Very good. Did any of the members have any follow-up questions that are burning? Representative Miller, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to know, and I think it's on your page 46 of your handout, inactive cities. Could you talk about inactive cities, and if you know which 8 those are, could you give us the name and the county they're in?
Yes, sir. Inactive cities are those that have not provided us the requirements that you had on the preceding pages, such as the city official update, UFERS, or the audits. Offhand, I cannot tell you the 8, but I'll be glad to get that to you by this afternoon.
Please, and if, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, you may.
I presume there's no financial statement non-compliant for 2022 because it's not due yet, or it's not able to be. They've
Correct.
not hit that time period.
Correct.
So, could you talk about financially non-compliant cities, the 13 you had before, what were the repercussions and outcome of that?
Well, anytime a city is non-compliant, the repercussion would be cutting off any access to state funding. Most of all would be the municipal road aid.
Municipal road aid, okay.
Yes, sir.
And that did happen. You did make some cutoff.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee members? Just a couple from me. Just wanted to, I've been asking the question about remote working. So remind me again, DLG, as far as remote working, what your policies are right now, and how many folks are back full-time?
As we provided in the answers to the supplemental questions, the statutes drive the process, and Personnel Cabinet puts down orders for that. As far as the numbers of people that are working remotely, I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, very good. And then finally, when was the last time that DLG, I guess, universally looked at organization as far as possibly combining operations? Has that been done in the Brashear administration since you guys have been in office, or is that planned to be done in the future?
You likely didn't hear her, but she said that that's in the strategic plan that we've provided in the response.
Yeah.
That we do look at that.
Okay, very good.
I do have a follow-up.
Okay.
Or another
Co-Chair Miller.
question. On page 37, Office of State Grants, under flood control LMPP, were any of the grants were any of them denied or failed to be granted for whatever reason?
No.
Okay. And for our sake, giving the impending special session, were any of those flood control LMPP projects in the areas that were recently hit by the tragic flooding?
We had some. I'm sorry, Aaron Jones, branch manager, the Office of State Grants.
Can you come up to the microphone real quick? Sorry, just so we can. It may be a short answer, but we still want to get it. I'm going to give you credit for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the funds that we have available now have not been used for that. But are you asking if the funding from the previous year have been used for the counties in that area?
Right. And any of the grants that have been made, and I'll just say the last 2 years, did any of them apply to those affected communities in the recent flood? I notice on a little bit later you've got Floyd County FEMA Bucks branch acquisition. Is that related to a flood project?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is a FEMA buyout.
FEMA buyout.
Yes.
Now Bucks Branch, I don't recall that. I remember right and left Beaver Creek being hard hit in Floyd County, but Bucks Branch I'm not familiar with. Is there any relevance to that project and the flooding we just recently had?
No, sir.
Okay.
Basically, what that is if a certain area has been flooded numerous times, FEMA will come into that area and offer to buy out the property. And then there's usually a local match required by FEMA, and that is the funds that DLG provides.
And generally, these communities don't have the money, so they have to come to the state for that money.
That is correct.
And is there, as it stands right now, before a special session, is there a pool of money that communities can draw on for these projects? Or is that dependent on the outcome of the special session?
No, there is $6 million approved.
Available, at
Available.
which point, this point, no one has made application for those funds.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Is that fund that you were talking about, the $6 million? Is that an annual or every 2 years supply of money for disaster relief, flood relief, or something that's labeled flood relief? Is that something we fund every 2 years, or that's funded through federal?
It has not been in the budget, but the General Assembly funded it last fiscal year and in each fiscal year of the current biennium. It hadn't been funded since 2014 before that.
And then just two other quick questions. Are there any pending, what I would call important positions that need to be filled, that are waiting to be filled in DLG at this point?
We have a few positions with the Office of State and Federal Grants that we are trying right now to get filled. We just did close a register on one of them, and hopefully we'll have another posted position in the Office of Federal Grants soon.
The register also recently closed for a position in the county's branch for a local government advisor.
Okay. I guess they'd be called manager type positions. Is that what that is too?
No, sir. Local government advisor takes over certain territory for counties, fiscal courts, and then fee offices as well. And then is more has nothing to do with the grant side. Is more just through their budget process, as well as any administrative help that they would need throughout the year.
Okay. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the, I think, Matt, you mentioned the FEMA involvement in these buyouts, or maybe it was Billy. I can't recall who responded with the masks on, but could you talk about the areas that were affected eligible under FEMA's current rules, or will FEMA have to take special action to identify properties, and are there pitfalls? Because Representative Tipton and I just worked on a home last week cleaning up after the flood, and there was some question as to whether that woman was going to qualify for FEMA aid because of some complexity in the deed that, in terms of how it passed down to her. Can you comment on that?
Do you want to?
There's a lot of emotion related to FEMA right now.
Sure, you would have to ask FEMA that question.
Okay.
I will say that DLG is not responding to the emergency as much as we later on will provide response for mitigation efforts, and that's what FEMA is doing here with the buyout that he mentioned. It's more of a mitigation effort rather than the emergency response that you're hearing about right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
My final question just has to do with any kind of, are y'all eyeing any future legislation, reorganization that we'll need to look at in 2023 that we need to be looking for? DLG, I guess, globally, and then maybe in each department?
Yeah, we mentioned that we're discussing that right now. I think it'd be premature to ask for anything currently.
Okay. I guess my only ask would just be if you could land on something prior to just, one of the reasons for this task force is so we don't end up with a 180-page bill dropped on us for reorgs, and it's hard to digest that if you don't know the intricacies of how each area works. So I would appreciate that for the future. But are there any other questions for DLG? I appreciate y'all coming back today to kind of do a little cleanup and sweep up, and we may at the end of this task force maybe have a couple more questions, but I don't see us needing to have you guys back next month. So I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Chairman. We're always available.
Thank you so much. All right. Next on our agenda is the Education and Labor Cabinet. Well, we've got several anxious people back here that look like they're ready to give us a report. Well, thank you guys for being here. And if you could introduce yourselves, and then the floor would be yours. And I'll just make, while you're sitting down in your chairs, just a comment. You know, this is all general information, and this is your first time coming before us, and we may end up having a second visit, just kind of some cleanup questions like we just did with DLG. But they did send us several pages of follow-up questions that were all very good information that we digested. And so anyway, I appreciate you all being here, and you have a huge cabinet, and we're excited and interested to learn more about it. So thank you, Mr. Secretary, and you can move right forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the task force. Appreciate being here, the opportunity to talk about the new Kentucky Education and Labor Cabinet. With all of the economic development that's been going on across the state, the many announcements the governor has made, those comes with job opportunities that we need to fill. And we have several thousand jobs that we need to fill. And the governor recognized that the Labor Cabinet and the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet had very similar missions in what our purpose was. And that is to get people trained and get them to work. And we've all talked about the workforce participation numbers, the unemployment numbers across the state and the nation, for that matter, that we want to do our best to improve the workforce participation in Kentucky. And we have numerous opportunities, as I mentioned. So now it's a matter of matching workers with employers. And in order to do that, the merger of the two cabinets, which I must acknowledge Senator Nemes's guidance and leadership on getting that through the General Assembly with Senate Bill 180. And having been at the cabinets before, he knew what both cabinets did. And I think it allows our cabinet now to address workforce from both early childhood all the way through job placement. So with early childhood to primary and secondary education, leading into, you know, if a student wants to go on to a four-year institution or to KCTCS, certainly we encourage that. But I think we're seeing in today's marketplace for labor that many students are electing not to go into post-secondary education, or looking at skilled trades to address the job needs that are in the market right now. So working on skills training, on apprenticeship, that's going to be a very important aspect of addressing these job needs across the state. And I also think we have areas of great opportunity in the state, but we don't have population. We don't have a supply of workers in those areas. Whereas in other parts of the state, we have population but not a lot of opportunity. So that's going to be a challenge too, of how we're going to marry the population, the supply of workforce to the job needs where they're needed. So that's going to be a key element of what we do. We're also looking to address the barriers to employment, and working with several other state agencies and local agencies as well. You know, childcare is a huge need and prevents people from getting into the workforce. Transportation issues, reentry and recovery from the criminal justice system or from drug issues. How can we work with employers and those people affected by this to get them into the workforce? And then, obviously, we worked very closely with the local workforce investment boards, the chambers of commerce, with local officials, with you as legislators. How can we best address the needs of your particular districts and the employment needs that you have there? So that is a brief overview of the merger of the two cabinets into one now. And I guess I got a little ahead of myself. Introductions. You need to know who's here with me. Yeah, better late than never. My name is Jamie Lincoln. I'm the Secretary of the Cabinet, and I will allow my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Vicki Wise. I'm Deputy Secretary for the Cabinet.
Good afternoon. I'm Sam Flynn. I'm Chief of Staff and General Counsel for the Cabinet.
And if it's okay with the task force, we'll get into our presentation. So you see, as I talked about briefly in my opening comments, the Education and Labor Cabinet was created by Senate Bill 180. It became effective on July 1st of 2022. So we're a little less than 2 months into the merged cabinet. And our role is to work, and I don't know about you all, but I hate reading PowerPoints to you. You
Yep.
can see them, so I'll just kind of touch the high points as we go through. But it's building the relationship between employers and employees, and meeting the employer's needs and getting the workforce trained for the jobs that they have. Obviously, we have to have data that drives how we make decisions and how we address certain needs. So through our Kentucky Center for Statistics and other parts of the cabinet, producing data and of how we're going to address the needs across the state and what might be lying behind the data that creates the situations that we're dealing with. Obviously, as I mentioned, we want to help young people fulfill their career needs, whether they want to go to a post-secondary education institution or if they want to go to work as soon as they leave high school. It's part of our role to address that need and to help them along that career path. Obviously, one of our divisions is wage and hour. Make sure we have proper protections in for work, that people are being paid for the work that they do. And also through our workplace standards, through occupational safety and health, we want to make sure that the workplace conditions are safe and allow for productivity and to avoid any lost hour injuries that might occur, prevent them before they happen. And then, as I look at the continuum of the workforce, I mentioned early childhood and primary and secondary education. Once we get people employed, we want to make sure they're protected with safety net programs, and those are unemployment insurance and workplace safety, as I mentioned, and workers' compensation benefits. So next slide. Our vision, I'll read that. The Education and Labor Cabinet fosters opportunities for lifelong learning, training, and career services while protecting the well-being of Kentucky's workforce. Things I've already addressed. In our organizational chart, you can see the new organization that was created through the merging of the cabinets. And those are fairly self-explanatory. I believe you have copies of this presentation in your packet.
We do.
So you can go through that. We're basically made up of 10 major organizational units that you can see there that employs about 1,539 people. And on the right side of each slide, you'll see our budgetary breakdown for the source of funds of how our cabinet is funded. And you can see that our cabinet is funded to the tune of just over $853 million, including a mixture of federal funds, general fund appropriation, restricted fund appropriation, the Workers' Compensation Funding Commission, and the tobacco settlement funds. In the Office of the Secretary, we have, obviously, we have oversight of the entire cabinet, and many of our offices are shared services. As you will see on the screen, legal, legislative, policy and audit, technology, communications, and so on. We also have some organizations or agencies that are attached to our cabinet administratively. We don't necessarily have direct oversight over their operations, but we support them from an administrative standpoint. And we do collaborate with them on any workforce needs and how it fits into our overall strategy. I've mentioned the Department of Workplace Standards. obviously that is to protect workers, both in occupational safety and health, wages and hours. And then we have a large education and training branch that helps work with employers and employees on safe workplace practices. I mentioned the Department of Workers' Claims, or better known as the as Workers' Compensation. And obviously that is to provide benefits to workers who are injured on the job. Office of Educational Programs, the key example here is, I'm sure Representative Miller knows of this program. I'm sure all of you do, but the first pilot program, if you will, was the governor's brainchild of Everybody Counts. And that's working with the local high schools and employers in the community to provide employment opportunities for graduating seniors. And essentially, it is our goal that every graduating senior has a job waiting for them if we have the employers that have the opportunities for them. So that we're looking to grow that program and roll that out. And obviously in Jefferson County, I think we have a much larger employer base, but in looking at the suburban and rural areas of the state, how can we work on a regional basis and work with multiple counties and multiple employers to provide job opportunities for graduating seniors? Kentucky Department of Libraries and Archives obviously is the records management wing of Kentucky state government to maintain all the records as well as provide library services to local libraries in your communities. One of our largest departments is obviously the Department of Workforce Development. That's kind of where my head is now and where everybody's head is, and how are we going to meet these job needs that we have across the state? How are we going to get people trained for these new advanced manufacturing and the new technologies that are coming down the road? And as I mentioned in my opening comments, the different employee pools that we have. We have people that are looking for jobs that need training, so we wanted to assess what their skills needs are and how we can train them for those jobs. But we also look at apprenticeship and skilled trades. How can we get young people into, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be young people. It can be anyone that's looking to learn a new skill in order to get a job in one of the skilled trades. Certainly adult education, how do we prepare people in their 20s and 30s for the job needs of the future who may not have graduated high school or who may not have the educational needs that the labor market requires. Our Office of Adult Education is there to address that. The Career Development Office are the Kentucky Career Centers across the state. This is where people can come either in person or virtually to get a skills assessment to determine what they're prepared to do when in relation to the job market that's available to them. And then through that assessment, we can determine if they have employer training needs that we need to address in order to better prepare them for the jobs that are available to them. The Workforce Innovation Board is a collaborative of the setting the policy for workforce needs across the state. And we also work with, as I mentioned earlier, the local workforce investment boards to address the needs because, again, we have several regions across the state and their needs may differ from one region to the next. So we need that local presence in order to better ascertain what is needed and how we can best address that. Then the Kentucky Apprenticeship Council, that is an organization to address just what it says, to address apprenticeship needs. Office of Unemployment Insurance has certainly been in the news for the last 2.5 years due to the pandemic and the perfect storm, I would couch, that we had to address with not only the technology that was available to us, but the enormous demands that were placed upon the unemployment insurance system, both at the federal level and certainly at the state level. I won't go through all the branches of unemployment insurance, but you will note that we have 251 employees in this branch, and that is down from I think there were 95 positions that were both in career development and in unemployment insurance. They were cross-trained to do both. But that may be one thing we want to look at going forward when we work with the task force on future needs that might be coming up. And in the last General Assembly with House Bill 4, the new unemployment insurance requirements, particularly with the work search requirements and the resources that will be needed to address that new requirement. So this is just a list of, as I mentioned earlier, agencies that are attached to our cabinet for administrative purposes. Again, we don't have direct oversight of their functions, but we are there to support and collaborate to meet our overall mission of getting people to work, getting them trained for work. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we are a fairly large cabinet now. And that concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to address any questions you might have.
I got one question to lead off, and then we've got several already that want to ask questions. Can you, you were talking about the administratively attached organizations. I guess KDE falls under that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Correct. Is that can you give us kind of the history on how that occurred, and did that all start with Kara? Is that correct?
I don't know that I can answer that question directly. It's certainly something we can look. I do know that by statute, they are governed by the Kentucky Board of Education and certainly the Commissioner of Education. But again, I meet regularly with Commissioner Glass to see how the cabinet can support KDE on their needs. Yeah. For instance, we've had several calls lately about the schools that were in the impacted areas of eastern Kentucky. Right. And we will do anything we can to assist them. But I can get you some more history about the relationship between KDE and the cabinet. What was formerly the Education Workforce Development Cabinet is now Education and Labor.
Do you sit on their KDE's board?
I do not.
You not? Okay. All right. All right. Representative McCool has a question to start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me correct myself there, Mr. Chairman. I'm an ex officio member of the Board of Education, and I do have, I'm not a voting member, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, and if I could, I'd like to just make a comment about a meeting we had last week as well. Job placement, you talked about job placement. How are you tracking those, and do you have data available to show how that is going, or?
Yes, sir, we do.
Website?
We have a system in place. It's called a essential skills system that our Kentucky Career Centers use to ascertain a candidate's qualifications and then determine if they need additional training and then matching them with job opportunities that are available to them. And attached to that essential skills system is a reporting system that's required by the U.S. Department of Labor, through which we report to them regularly of what the data shows on the assessment of skills and job placements.
So if somebody comes in and you can kind of track and see whether or not they went to work, and
yes, sir,
you have that data.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, can I make one other comment if I can? You know, last week I was in the Education Committee, and in that committee, Mr. Glass mentioned about I think it was President KCTC has mentioned about 60% of the students coming in are underprepared. And you may not have an answer to this, but I'd just like to put a bug in your ear or whatever. Perhaps if they can get, the secretaries get together on discussing this. I don't know if that underprepared is all academic, or is it social, or is it a combination of things. But in order to have a good workforce, we got to improve that preparedness from high school to post-secondary. So somehow or another, we got to identify what those barriers are and see if we can overcome those. So when they hit the ground running, you shouldn't be having to repeat what we're doing. Now, some of that may have been just due to the dilemma we went through with COVID and everything like
yes,
that.
Sir.
I don't know. It could very well be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really a question there. Just hoping to put it and on the radar screen and have that conversation with the other secretaries as well about getting over this underprepared students for the workforce.
Yes, sir. Couldn't agree more. Education and training are the key, without a doubt. And I'll certainly have that conversation with Commissioner Glass and with other secretaries, see how we can address that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Link, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, sir.
You have a huge cabinet and a huge responsibility, and we appreciate the cabinet and what they do. And thank you so much for the presentation. I was looking at your mission statement and your vision statement. I appreciate the fact that you put those in there. But something you said a minute ago was one of your aims is to get people trained and get them to work. Would you say that's one of the biggest goals of the cabinet?
I think certainly it has to be. Right. It's, I think, and just a personal comment, I think workforce development is a nonpartisan issue.
Yes.
I think we all have the same goal, is to get people. I mean, what are we doing? We want to get people educated, we want to get them trained, and we want to get them to work and be productive citizens in our communities. And I do believe that, again, with the economic development announcements that have been, put forth all across the state, and certainly education and healthcare, those are always critical issues. But I think workforce development in this day and age is certainly a very important and critical issue.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Can I do a follow-ups?
Yes, you may.
In light of that, I've had a number of calls and visits from constituents and people from around the Commonwealth related to the Governor's Scholars Program. And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this.
Don't know that I do.
Well, I think it's pretty well known across the land, it seems to be. But some of the students who participated in GSP this summer, some of the things they went through, they had to declare their white privilege, their gender, their political affiliation, their sexuality, and their stance on abortion. Can you tell me where that fits in with getting people trained and getting them to work?
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that, and I'd have to go back and look and get back with you and respond back to you.
I'll let you follow up with that. But in my understanding, sir, I'm sorry, Chair.
Sure. You follow up? Yes.
Your mission is vitally important. It's important to the young people, the people across the age range and across the state. And the work that you do is vitally important in getting people trained and getting them to work. There are employers who are looking for employees, and there are students who want opportunities. There are parents who want opportunities for their kids so they could put down roots here and grow.
Yes.
That they themselves could have a family. I just don't see where this fits in to the goal or the role of education. And I think it crosses a very serious line. And it's something I think that we need to look into seriously. And if you're unaware of it, I would appreciate the fact if you would look into it and report back to us.
I will indeed. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Westerfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and I apologize for my tardiness. I sent you a message. Court happens when it happens, and the judges take as long as they take. And this judge went as fast as a judge could have gone, so that's not their fault. I apologize. I'm going to ask a couple of questions about IT. So if you've covered that, I apologize. Okay. I've asked each one of the agencies that's come before this body these same sorts of questions. I actually find this the presentation you've handed is pretty helpful, showing us the various organizational units as you've described them. Between those 10 organizational units, how many IT systems are there?
I don't know, Senator, that I could answer that question right now. There are several, and some are larger, some are smaller.
Sure.
But we can certainly get you a list of all the different IT systems that we employ right now. Some of them we are certainly working to upgrade and improve.
I would ask that if you would please provide an accounting for each one of these agencies or departments, what IT systems they have, and whether or not that's one that is being upgraded or
Certainly.
needs to be, and a timeline for that if there's already some steps down that road that the agent or the cabinet's taken.
Be glad to.
Are there existing, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may.
I'm just out of habit, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that latitude. Is there something? Are there IT or other technology related impediments to the cabinet being able to serve its function better that you can identify?
Off the top of my head, one thing that I've really been interested in, and we as a cabinet have been interested in, is being more proactive of reaching out to people in the workforce and ascertaining if they're not employed, why aren't they employed? Instead of having a career center, or instead of us waiting for people to come to us, I would rather go to the people and find out what do they need to get into the workforce. And we're currently looking at any technology that might help us identify who those people are, so that we can then establish communication with them directly to see if we can't help them get into the workforce.
So that's not an infrastructure problem. That's a goal or an objective you'd like to.
That is a goal and objective, and I think we're exploring what technology might be available to help us identify those people and then allow us to communicate directly with them.
It's fortuitous. I had an opportunity to tour Microsoft's campus, or two buildings on Microsoft's campus, I guess, a few weeks ago, and a big portion of the presentation was about their workforce. They own LinkedIn, as you're aware, and of course their data only covers the members of LinkedIn, but they've got some really helpful information there about workforce and participating members, and where transitions are happening between career fields, and worth looking at if that's something you're interested in.
Well, if I could, we are getting ready to execute a contract with LinkedIn to become our essential skills program, so that will help us build a more robust employment system.
2 more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. First, the IT or the technological impediments question, I still want to get an answer to. This is the Executive Branch Efficiency Task Force. And to be very blunt, I'd be stunned, and so far I have been stunned. Each time an agency's come in and I've asked the question, what technology things are impediments to getting your job done better? And they've all given very diplomatic and very friendly responses, which was a nice way of saying, we're not going to say publicly whatever problems we have with the systems that we've got. I'm asking for you to say if the ship's sailing smoothly today, or if it's not, where isn't it? In the context of what we might be able to do legislatively or budgetarily to fix that.
I think I would say that we are maintaining services and we're providing services to people. Can they be better? Absolutely. And we're always looking at that. I think through my experience in state government, a lot of times current systems are not upgraded as often as they should be. And that's usually, I'm going to guess, is a budgetary issue. But for these systems to run at peak efficiency, they need to have the latest updates. And I think that's one thing that we're really taking a serious look at is what systems need to be upgraded, what systems need to be replaced for us to better do our jobs.
Other than the UI system, which I think we could all pick out of this list as one in dire need.
Absolutely.
And I'm honestly surprised you didn't say it out loud. That one goes without saying. Is there another one in the list here in the 10 that has a system that you can identify that is just behind?
We just executed a contract to upgrade the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation's system, which is certainly directly related to the workforce. And as I mentioned, we're implementing a new essential skills system that I think puts us at the forefront. Several other states have gone with LinkedIn as well. I think certainly the UI system is, they're all important, but it's of peak importance is the UI system and getting it replaced. And one of the issues, and we're still working on that, and we believe that the problem we're seeing nationwide in talking with national organizations is when the pandemic struck, the demands upon the UI systems across every state Many were in the same situation Kentucky was. And with great credit to our IT staff, we have upgraded existing systems. We have made them much more efficient. But you've got several states that are looking to replace their unemployment insurance systems or significantly upgrade them. And you only have very limited vendors that have the capacity and the capabilities of doing that. So it's basic supply and demand. The demand is very high and the supply is low. So we're trying to work our way through that dilemma of finding I don't want to just sign a contract for a new UI system without knowing that vendor can perform. That would be a disservice, I think, to the Commonwealth and the people of this state. So we're going to find the best system that we can that certainly has a budgetary impact that we can afford. But with this body right here, I feel like we can talk to you about that and see what solutions might be helpful to making us achieve that goal.
Mr. Chair, I'd only ask that in the follow-up information that we ask them to provide, in addition to what their IT setup looks like on these various agencies within the cabinet, I want them to respond to the concern about GSP or GSA. I think that's illegal under existing civil rights law, and I would be interested to hear the cabinet's position on the legality of asking students these questions.
We'll look into that.
Thank you.
One quick question, follow up on the UI system. Can you just give us a brief where we're at on evaluating? I mean, you kind of did, but you didn't. I didn't hear everything. I wanted to hear as far as how quickly that's going to be, what your goal is, how quickly it's going to be in effect, when it's going to be purchased, if it's been purchased, and what your goal is budget-wise to spend on this specific software.
The General Assembly appropriated $47.5 million for the replacement of the current UI system. So
and that was a previous budget, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And we're still looking at market conditions and again, supply and demand.
Yeah.
Regarding where we are, I want to be very careful.
I understand.
I'm an old finance guy too, so I'm just old. But I don't want to say anything I'm not supposed to when it's an open procurement.
That's fine.
So I can certainly tell you that it is still ongoing. We have been working with a vendor. There's still, a project this size. There's negotiations and things of that nature that we're working through. But certainly when we have information that we can provide, we certainly will do that. Regarding a timeline, certainly as soon as possible, if that's a very vague answer, but I suspect that once a contract is executed, given the capacities of the vendors across the country, that we're looking anywhere from 30 to 40 months is my uneducated guess. But these are very large, very complex systems. Yeah. And I think, again, with the capacity of some of these vendors, they're stretched. And we want to get the best product. I would rather get it right than get it fast. The system that we have now has been upgraded over the last 2 years. It was several updates behind, and we have addressed that. So I get a report every morning as to how that system is working. And every morning I get a report that says no issues, which no news is good news. So right now we're maintaining, and if we can avoid any other catastrophic events, I will tell you, and with great credit to our unemployment insurance staff, with the tragedy, the tornadoes in western Kentucky and now the flooding in eastern Kentucky, several of our unemployment insurance staff were pulled off of their regular work to be in those areas, physically in those areas. They're at all of the disaster recovery centers, and we even borrowed, with Governor Edwards' help from the state of Louisiana, we borrowed a mobile unit. And we took that mobile unit to the state parks where people had been displaced. We've parked outside of grocery stores, outside of Lowe's, in the affected areas to help people file their claims. So if we can stop those from happening again, that would certainly help. But obviously, we have no control over that.
And just one real quick follow-up. So a purchase of this size, do you go to an outside agency or anybody to give you a second opinion of this before it's purchased? How is that?
We
process?
certainly work with the U.S. Department of Labor because they have a national picture of what's going on in the marketplace. There's also an organization called the National Association of State Workforce Administration or Association that we can tap for information on the national picture of what's happening with other states and what products they're using, what vendors they're looking at, and like with anything, there are quality vendors and there's not quality vendors, and that's what we're looking for. And then certainly we have a lot of expertise within the cabinet who have dealt with unemployment insurance for their entire careers, and they know what Kentucky needs to meet our folks' needs.
Co-Chair Miller has a question, and then Senator Nemes is next.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I do have a follow-up on the system issue, and I don't think this will be a contract confidentiality issue.
Okay.
My understanding from when we were discussing funding a couple of years ago is that you weren't looking for an off-the-shelf solution, that you would buy an off-the-shelf product and then adapt it. It was sounded like at the time more, you're going to write something from scratch for Kentucky. Could you comment on that, please?
That is not my goal. And as far as off the shelf goes, we did a lot of research. There was not an off the shelf product. Now, I will say there are products that have been developed or systems that have been developed, generally speaking, but because of differences of state laws, they will have to be tailored to each state's needs and requirements. So is that off the shelf? I don't know. It's not like, certainly I don't mean to be trite. It's not like going by QuickBooks at Staples. These are very large, complex systems, but I do believe there are a limited number of vendors across the country that have developed the basic system, and that's what we're looking for. We don't want to write a whole new system. That wouldn't be smart. And quite honestly, I don't think that's something we want to own and be responsible for upgrading all the time. That's why we want to find a qualified vendor that has the expertise and the flexibility to be able to keep us upgraded so that situations like this that happen in the future, hopefully, certainly I won't be around, I hope, but as I made a comment to the UI Reform Task Force earlier, it may not be exactly building the church for Easter Sunday, but I think we need to build a system or have a system in place for any further catastrophic things that we're not caught like we were in spring of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman, I have another question, but if you want to go to Senator Nemes.
Senator Nemes, been waiting patiently.
Sure. The couple other questions is the merger of, and this may be his question, but the merger of the two cabinets, I assume, reduced the number of non-merit employees when you combine cabinets. Do you have a number, what the savings of that combination has been?
I don't have the exact number, and obviously employment is fluid. I don't know. Kimberly, do we have that information offhand? No, ma'am. I can certainly get that back to you very quickly.
I would like that. And the other is you had a very helpful breakdown of employees by activity, I guess, of your 10 activities. But the Department of Workforce Development had 40% of your employees. I would like to see, where do they break down in this listing? Where's the bolus, the big chunk of people?
We can certainly break that down by agency. And I will tell you that I believe our Office of Vocational Rehabilitation is a large portion of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess you knew I would have some questions since I've worked at both cabinets. So I have a plethora. If you indulge me I'll try to be quick with as many as I can. First of all, I want to thank Council Flynn, Deputy Wise, and of course Secretary Link. You're in a hot seat. So and it's going to be hot for a while. So
It's not helping me lose any weight, though.
with the combination of the cabinets, it's a great opportunity, but it's a lot of work and a lot of you're going to take a lot of heat. It's a large cabinet, but what we don't understand, most of the legislature, is so much of it is attachments. Far that you have no control over or little of. Just like they ask if you were on the board of the KDE. You're not. You get to sit in on the meetings, but that's about it. Another one is the governor's scholars. It looked like that you should have known the answer to that and you didn't. Well, the reason is that that's an attachment that you don't have control of. You'll have to look into that. So we should be asking governor's scholars, maybe having them here to ask those questions directly from them. A couple of small questions. Kentucky Stats. I see you have Kentucky Center for Statistics. Is that the same thing?
Yes, sir. That's the same thing.
Okay. And OSHA, are y'all still thriving on your education and training for the businesses instead of citing them, educating and training them?
That's our goal, certainly, is to educate and train and not be a citation or enforcement
Who gets
agency.
to go out and give the safety awards?
Yeah, we do that, yes.
Okay. The big problem we had was with OSHA inspectors. Have y'all upgraded their grades? What is your training for them? Have you done apprenticeships for them? What's your status on the OSHA
We are
trainers?
working on the compensation package because we need quality individuals for that. As far as apprenticeship, of course, we do the training of any new inspectors that are hired. I don't believe there's any specific apprenticeship for that, but working with the apprenticeship schools.
You're still working with Eastern Kentucky on their training, I'm assuming.
Eastern Kentucky University?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then for Council Flynn, what's your workload with the OSHA compliance? You still have a backlog of those things in the workplace complaints and workers' claims.
I'm sorry, Senator. I guess I don't quite understand your question because you mentioned workers' claims and
There's
workplace standards.
three different.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And I'm sure you're in charge of all three now.
Well, in terms of the legal services that are provided to each of those departments, yes, but not in charge of the departments proper.
Okay. Can you get me an answer on what's the backlog on the your cases?
Sure.
Okay.
Senator, just to be sure, I want to make sure we get you the information. You want information on the backlog of OSHA citations, workers' compensation claims? Is that what you're
Not
asking?
the workers' claims, but the insurance that are not paying the claims. Y'all.
Oh, okay.
The cabinet has filed suit.
Yes.
And there's a backlog of that.
Okay.
And you work with the Attorney General on a lot of it.
Yes.
So, okay. And then I'd like to have a rundown on the registered apprenticeship program.
Yes,
I think that you probably don't have any employees left that are actually in that program. It's a combo with the employer services. I know you have employees in that, but
right.
Not actually the RA program.
Right, and that's you're right. We have excuse me. We have lost some employees that we're looking to backfill. Excuse me, but we're doing that as quickly as possible. And then, excuse me.
Water there.
In this labor market, a lot of companies and a lot of organizations are looking for people with those skills, and we're competing against them. So we're doing our best to back
And then the libraries, I saw it was in the office of the secretary. It used to be an attachment. Is it in the office of the secretary or still an attachment?
It is a department under the office of the secretary, a separate department. Yes, sir. It's a
Okay.
freestanding, and we do have interaction with them.
In the IT, there was asked about your systems. I know because you have a combination, a lot of attachments in that, your cabinet doesn't have just one system. For instance, the unemployment system, you're trying to get a new one to do it. And I think you can tout your claim system because Steve Beshear started and Governor Bevin finished that where it used to be just paper, and now it's in that system. I noticed you said that you don't want that you want a company to come in and you don't want to own the system. I think you need to qualify that because in the claims department, the best thing we did is own the code. Because if you don't own the code, you're totally reliant on a company that may be defunct, bought out, or charging you too much to come in and do your services.
I think there's a sweet spot there. You're right.
That's correct.
I think some things we might want to own, other things we probably don't because the cost of upgrading should be. And as technology changes with the cloud and getting away from mainframe type systems.
And how much many of your systems have been combined into your IT people, your IT people for your cabinet, your IT people for each different division, and then the COT?
I don't know that I have the exact answer to that. We can certainly get you a breakdown on that.
Because working together is very tough.
Yes.
Because when we were doing the claims and getting a new system in, we had to wait for COT to come over and blah, blah. And we finally stepped on them and said that we want to be like KSP. If we have a problem, we want you there now, not to have to go through an order.
Sure.
A desk order.
And I think it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think you'd agree. It's with the myriad of systems that we have, each one has its own special circumstances.
And the next thing that the last thing that not brought up at all, and I'm sure Senator Westerfield is very interested in this, and you're going to be thrown into it whether you like it or not, is cyber. So we need to talk about that off. I think we've already talked about that.
You and I have talked about that, yes,
We
sir.
need to continue that. So
cybersecurity is always going to be, as you become more reliant upon IT, obviously.
And
I'm sure the
education
General
and
Assembly
training.
deals with it and everybody. And on the UI side, one thing I would mention is we have put into place measures against fraud that have essentially stopped unemployment, fraudulent unemployment insurance
what I'm
claims.
talking about, that's just a part.
Yes.
The other part is the workforce development, the education, and that for the badly needed cyber engineers. There's 700,000 jobs across the nation that they can't fill now,
Right.
and they're six-figure incomes. So, was I quick enough, Mr.
Very
Chairman?
good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple more. And if we look at the under workforce development, I noticed a large portion of your budget's there, $200 million. Is that correct? Do you have a way of assessing? You talked about kind of thinking through there's always new always new schools of thought on how to get people into the workforce, how to train them. Do you have a continuous evaluation of these programs annually or every 2 years to evaluate programs? And do you end programs that don't perform? And how do you evaluate that?
Senator, I've been here for a year now in this role, so I don't know that I can really provide you a thorough answer to that.
Right.
What I would say is that we always have to be continually looking at how we're doing.
Right.
And what's not working or what is working, how's technology, what new systems are available to us to allow us to do our jobs better. So we'll continue to do that. And of course, the data. We need to capture all the data we possibly can to tell us how things are working and help us make better decisions about, do we keep this system? Do we buy a new system? Do we tweak the current system? I agree with you completely. There should always be continuous improvement in what we do.
So I guess what I'm asking for is some kind of evaluation going on all the time, because I think unfortunately in government sometimes people, we've always done it this way. That's the answer. And I think if there are programs that aren't working and you're still spending millions of dollars on them, we need to focus those monies somewhere else.
Sure, and I do. We work closely with the U.S. Department of Labor, which provides a lot of that funding, and they're very
specific on how
how it is and what the results are. I think to your question. So I think we're all striving for the same goal, that we're spending our money efficiently and achieving the best results we can.
Very good. Very good. Any other questions at this time? I tell you, we mentioned at the very beginning, this is a massive cabinet, a lot of questions. I mean, I still have a bunch of questions in the back of my mind. I just working on formulating them. So I think at this time, maybe we'll just pause and say thank you for the information that you've given us, and maybe charge. We have had some requests that we've made of your cabinet, and then also leave the members with the opportunity to send questions in to our staff, and we can forward it to you all, and maybe have you back next month. And if it's the next month, then we'll, if you need time, we'll give you that time. But I think there's still some important questions to ask, and I'm blown away by how big the cabinet is and how much oversight you have, and we just need to be cognizant of making sure that every dime that we put in each of these cabinets are spent wisely, and if they're not being spent wisely, we refocus them in another area. So, and it sounds like that's your goal and that's your aim.
Yes, sir. And I would tell you that the people that are here with me and the entire staff, I think we have a little over 1,500 people now in the new cabinet, and every one of them is committed. And I'm sitting here with my two colleagues, but it takes all 1,500 of them to make this work, and they do work very hard. They're very committed to what they're doing, and I look forward to working with this task force and with you in the future to help us be better at what we do.
Yeah, very good. Well, if there are any other questions, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.